Since 2016, I have been obsessed with Tom Brady's social media. We're talking like CIA agent trying to bring down the Soviet Union in the 1970s obsessed. He had this fake newspaper called the TB Times, which he would post on Instagram and Facebook every time the Pats won games. And I needed to know what it meant, because this was weird. And Tom Brady was sort of a buttoned-up guy, and the Patriot way wasn't that weird. And these were by far the weirdest things that any professional athlete was posting on the internet. So I wanted to know what it meant, and I hounded the social media guy, Jeff Vine, and the artist, Dean Krupka, for 4 years to talk to me about what these were. They never would. They wanted to preserve the mystery, which I totally respected. But now that Tom Brady is going to Tampa Bay, no relation to the TB Times, they told me the whole story. You can read about it on foxsports.com, but here I wanted to take you through the backstory of some of my favorite posts that they told me about. And yeah, no, thanks for asking. This is the greatest moment of my career, and aim high, kids, so let's do it. So you might remember that in 2016, Tom Brady was suspended for the first 4 games of the season because of the whole Deflategate saga, which is still a sore subject, so I'm not going to talk about it. But Dean and Jeff were super excited because they loved their idea for the 5th game when he came back, which was against the Cleveland Browns. So they had him as Captain Planet shooting out of the sky, and a few other players putting their rings together. And they showed it to Tom on Sunday, the day of the game, and he was like, no. And they were like, what? He didn't want to be the center of attention. So because the game was in Cleveland and they had to scramble, they were like, okay, let's go with Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So they took Tom out entirely, gave each player an instrument, and just posted it online. Eventually, the TB Times became less of a front page of a newspaper and more this totally bizarre, trippy comic strip, sometimes a single cartoon. And there was this guy, this crocodile named Croc, who was the narrator for the whole thing. When I asked Dean and Jeff, I was like, what does he mean? What does he represent? They still wouldn't totally tell me. You gotta read the story for more on that. But they did tell me that the reason he showed up the first time was because the Pats had just beat the Saints. They wanted to do a parade theme because it was in New Orleans, and alligators live in the bayou, so they just tossed him on there. And they said that people really seemed to like him, so they just kept him around. I guess every superhero has an origin story. I think my favorite backstory that the guys told me about was when the Pats beat the Bucks in 2017. This really, I was desperate to find meaning in anything at this point, and even I was like, did they just phone it in? Because it showed Brady walking the plank, but then this narwhal whale shows up and says, I'm Nellie the narwhal. And then it shows Brady and the whale fighting pirates, and then he hoists the Pats flag at the end on the Bucks ship. And I was like, what is going on? And apparently the explanation is that Dean was moving that week, so he didn't have a ton of time. And Jeff said that they were like, this is not good, but we have to finish it. And I just find it, who hasn't been there? One of my favorite posts that the TB Times ever put up was called Bill's Got Talent, and the Pats had just beat Buffalo. So there was a lineup of all these famous Bills. They had Bill Hader, Bill Gates, Bill Belichick was there, but it didn't make any sense, again, like any of this. And so I Googled famous Bills to see if that's how these guys came up with the people to put in this. And that's exactly how they came up with it. Dean said that they read the article that week that I wrote, and they're like, yeah, no, we just Googled famous Bills. They still want Bill's Got Talent to actually happen. So, if there are any networks out there, maybe the one I work for, we could put something together. I'm just saying, just spitballing, just an idea. I'm not a doctor. What Dean and Jeff ultimately told me is that they planned to have a narrative arc for the TB Times, and they just kind of ended up scrambling week to week, which I really love. I find that very relatable. But after the divisional round in 2018, when the Pats beat the Titans, they kind of had no idea what to do. They knew they wanted to do a Greek god theme, so they had these players dressed up in togas, but they had no joke to go with it. So they showed it to this guy, Kevin, who works for Tom Brady, and they were like, help us. And he came up with a joke about alternate uniforms, which ended up really working. They were very relieved, but they knew that after the AFC Championship, if the Pats won, and they had to get every post ready the week before, they were like, we want a solid joke. We want something we don't have to scramble last minute for. So they came up with bowl cuts. Everyone really seemed to like that. Very simple, the Pats would be going to the Super Bowl. And I think they executed it very well. There's way more information about the TB Times and Tom Brady's social media, probably more than you want, in the article I wrote for foxsports.com, so go check it out if you're interested. But mostly I just want to say thank you to all the fans and readers who came along on this totally bizarre journey and fell down the rabbit hole with me all these years. It was so fun to care about something this lighthearted and generous, and a huge thank you to Dean and Jeff, too, for kind of winking back and forth on the internet at me for all this time and eventually pulling back the curtain and letting us know what was going on. I really appreciate it. Hope maybe that Croc shows up in the Tampa Bay Times, the real TB Times at some point. It's a little bittersweet this is all over, but, you know, Croc was just the friends we made along the way.
For the best access, perspective, and personalities in all of sports, follow us at Fox Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.